So, conference report was talking about illusion. Illusion's interesting subject. Um, it relates a lot to what I was talking about what is the ultimate measure, the search in logic for some initial axioms being interpretable as just, I think, a better interpretation in relativistic reason. You're looking for your standard measures and how are you going to establish them. you know and I think we can learn from the history of like how the foot, and how that kind of measure, the yard, and then how this gets, how the notion of a second, is pretty ancient, and yet it wasn't an exact notion. We eventually got it down to this exact thing and redefined it on chemical properties, on the frequency of some molecule or something. I don't exactly know what they do, but what the standard is right now. But if you look those up, they try to look for standards like like the milliliter thing. A gram of water is a milliliter of water is a cubic centimeter, something like that. It's almost just making it easy to reestablish, because you could just say, well, this thing's a meter long, but it might change and get broken over time, and so this is the trick. You have to go. It's still always down to a perceptive thing, to a relationship in this case, and perceptions of comparing. Now, one person offered an interesting technical definition in the comments of you can measure an illusion. So, that optical illusion where it could look like a pool of water on a hot road ahead. That's an illusion because you could make a prediction that there'd be water there and it's not there. And he was saying other things like, is there a purpose for life? That can't be tested. So that was an interesting point. Now, some things can't be tested, but I'm not sure about the purpose for life. You just need to have a definition, and you can test it now. You might not have a shared definition is the issue, but my idea of the interpretation of an illusion is just that when you're interpreting things mistakenly, that is kind of overlaps with this idea of testability, because it's through testing that you might discover that. But the idea of an illusion is that we know that this state can occur, and it can in fact occur while it's an illusion, right? In the case of a persistent optical illusion that you've already figured out, that it's not as it seems to be. But for example, if you're looking at that water illusion that happens from the hot air on the road, I know that's from the hot air. When I see that, I don't think it's water. Is that an illusion anymore? I mean, does it look like water? It's like, well, no, it doesn't look exactly. It looks like one of those. Does it look a lot like water? Yeah, but you could totally tell it's not water. And on a rainy day when there is water, it never looks like that. So, yeah, it doesn't. Is it an illusion or not then? Oh. There are persistent illusions that you can look right at them, but okay. I think a more interesting thing is that the illusion of things that we are correctly getting an illusion of, and again, it comes down to our interpretation. So, for example, right now with two eyes, I'm getting parallax information. But if I close one eye, I still get depth information. The shades and stuff are still telling me a lot about the depth. And if someone throws something to me with my one eye, I might be a little bit less likely to be able to catch it, but I probably will, depending, So is the depth perception I have with just one eye, is that an illusion of depth perception? Because I don't really have two eyes, because having two eyes doesn't give you, there's only so much with the eyes are only that far apart. There's only so much calculation you really get. There's a plus and minus, so it's not perfect depth perception. It's just better. So see, that's what I'm saying. We interpret it as less elusive because it is more consistent with what we think the interpretation should be, right? And the funny thing here is that how do you go back? Where's your original ruler? What's your standard by which something isn't an illusion? The sense in which everything is an illusion for people is it's interesting to me because if I'm correct and I realize this, does that mean it's not an illusion for me? But it's this idea that basically you're inside a holodeck and your brain recreates what it thinks your surroundings are. And you feel like you're in it, touching it. I obviously feel like I'm touching this lighter. Right? And I am, by material definition. But the eye that's touching it is my body out here. Fingers, cells made of their own material. I'm just getting little nerve impulses telling me about it, and then I'm imagining it myself my conscious self, much more involved in terms of changeability. Actually, I'm all the way around this. Really, it's this little part of my brain that happens to have some sensors down there that are being told. So my interpretation of everything that I'm immersed in this world, when in reality I just have senses. If I had no sense of touch and I was blind, this could be in my hand and I'd have a very different sense of my interaction with it. I wouldn't even know about it. I had to think about that for a second. How to get my hand if I didn't even know about it. Okay. So, it's just kind of a pointless definition of illusion at that point of everything's an illusion because, okay, at that time it's not an illusion. I experience myself as being in this reproduction of what my brain, through its processing, thinks is around me. And it's been quite demonstrated that I miss all sorts of things, radio waves and stuff that I can't see with my regular senses. I have to read about it and deduce that they're there. There's little tiny particles. There's a big scale. I'm in the middle of a galaxy. There's all kinds of things going on right here that don't make it into my holodeck. So it's an illusion that we think we're so present and we know what's going on around us. Because I'm right here, of course I know what's going on right here now. So that's an illusion. But then again, I know that, so is it still an illusion? Well, we come back to some of this thing about persistent illusions. Like, I like to look at an optical illusion and try to flip it, Like that Kubert one where there's the cubes and they can be in or out. I like to be able to, force it one way and then force it another way and then force it in and then force it out. And there's some illusions just really, really difficult and maybe impossible. Like, I've showed that one before, that's that shading one. We have things that look like they're different shades and it's really just a trick of the eye. That is really hard to overcome. So is it enough to say it's not an illusion when I'm looking right at it? It looks like two different colors, but I know they're the same. Is that an illusion? Part of the reason the word breaks down is because of our black and white sort of reasoning patterns, right? Because really, if we just take it relativistically, yeah, you could say there's some amount of illusion in anything, but when you start being rational, ratios, and you're comparing things, then you realize, okay, there's misinterpretation in everything, but there can be more in this, less in that. And how do you break down to that, I think ultimately our measure is the subset of our perceptions that are consistent. So this is weighed heavily for sense perceptions, which are consistent whether you have your wishful thinking or not. But it does also include anything else that's persistent. If you have a persistent illusion of being followed, that will become a part of what you measure illusion and reality against. It'll become part of your reality. And the illusion for you, will be the opposite of what it looks like your illusion is for the rest of us. And that's just the way that it is. To overcome that as an individual, skeptically, there's ways to double check yourself. There's ways to measure, like the guy talking about illusions being met. Whenever you have a chance to measure, that's a chance to check for the illusions. And the key of a measurement is just keeping the thing you use to measure so it can be a standard, so you can reuse it. But what if it's the wrong size? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a particular size. It's like 3 of those things. If you could just keep a hold of that and always use it, it's that consistency that we're comparing against, right? And then intersubjectively, we magnify at least the appearance that this creates illusions because of the scaling and the resolution problems of taking other people's knowledge and blowing it up, the scaling and trying to piece it in. But there's no doubt that also, this intersubjective illusion of reality, that we're ever present along with millions of other people and we share somehow their perceptions and we've compared them, their sense of that's an illusion. And yet it does create opposites. This is how we find out that the sun and the moon aren't really the same size. That's another interesting example of an illusion. So the sun and the moon are remarkably just about exactly the same angular size in the sky. Is an illusion to say that they're the same size? Well, no, because they are the same apparent size. But if you were to interpret that to mean that they actually are the same size when you go up to them, well, obviously, then it's an illusion. Can everything be like this? Can any illusion? I wonder if we go through thousands of examples of illusions, once you figure out it's an illusion, shouldn't it not be considered an illusion anymore? Right? Because then you know, even if you're still fooled by it, in some sense, or tricked, your eyes are still tricked, your brain knows better. So it's not an illusion anymore. I wonder if we want to name, like, the cognitive process, you get your perceptions and then it goes bouncing through the brain, let's say, and you get more ideas about it. I mean, are we saying the illusion is right up to here with before the analysis starts? So if it still looks like, the illusion, then it's still an illusion, even if you have figured it out. I don't really make that kind of distinction usually.